Nestled along the gentle banks of the Silver Stream River, Rivertown is a quaint and bustling halfling community. The town pulses with the sounds of daily life, merchants calling out their wares, children laughing and playing in the streets, and the rhythmic clanging of the blacksmith's hammer. Brightly colored houses with thatched roofs line the cobblestone streets, each with well-tended gardens bursting with flowers and herbs. In this idyllic setting lives a young halfling girl named Mani Tanglefoot. Mani is spirited and curious with bright green eyes and a mop of orange hair, often tied into two playful ponytails. Despite her best efforts to dress in fine clothes, her adventurous nature often leaves her in a state of delightful disarray. Mani's family is one of the wealthiest in Rivertown, thanks to her father Elias Tanglefoot's successful hatchery renowned for its high-quality fish. Growing up in a home filled with the finer things in life, Mani enjoys a lifestyle of comfort and privilege. Yet her innocence and blunt curiosity keep her grounded, always eager to explore and learn more about the world around her. One sunny afternoon in Rivertown, the sounds of clashing wooden swords echoed through Garrett Bramblethorn's garden. Mani, with her orange hair tied in two ponytails, faced her uncle with an aggravated expression. Garrett, a seasoned adventurer with a broad smile, effortlessly parries her strikes.
"Keep your guard up,"
Garrett instructed, his voice firm but encouraging. Mani adjusted her stance, her green eyes focused intently on her opponent. She lunges forward, attempting to land a hit, but Garrett sidesteps gracefully.
"You're getting better,"
Garrett remarked, blocking her next attack with ease.
"Remember, it's not just about strength. Use your agility and wit. Sometimes a strong defense can put your opponent at a disadvantage."
Taking his advice to heart, Mani shifted her tactics. Instead of attacking, she focused on defending. To her delight, Garrett found himself struggling to break through her guard.
"See?"
Garrett said with a grin.
"You've got me on my toes now."
During the intense exchange, Garrett made a sudden misstep, losing his balance. Mani seized the moment, pressing her advantage, but with a quick, deft move, Garrett turned his blunder into a success, sweeping Mani's legs out from under her gently and pinning her in a playful yet victorious stance. After a particularly intense exchange, Garrett called for a break. They both sat down on a bench, catching their breath. Garrett handed Mani a water skin, and she took a grateful sip.
"You're improving every day,"
Garrett said, ruffling her hair.
"One day you'll be even better than me."
Mani beamed at the compliment.
Do you really think so?
"I know so.
His eyes twinkling with pride.
You have the heart of a true warrior. And remember, sometimes when we halflings think we've failed, we have a way of turning it around. Think of this world as a true halfling would, and that's where your power lies. It's in our nature to find luck in the unlikeliest places, to make the best out of any situation."
Mani nodded thoughtfully, absorbing his words. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of her heritage. With a smile, she stood up, ready for another round. A flock of birds catch Garrett's attention. He stands up and stretches, glancing at the sun dipping low in the sky.
"It's getting late. I should walk you home. I have something for your father."
Mani's curiosity piqued instantly.
What is it, Uncle Garrett?
Garrett hesitated, a hint of concern crossing his face.
"It's something very special and quite dangerous. I'm not sure it's something you should see."
But it's gonna kill me if I don't find out. Please, I've been really good lately.
Mani protested, her green eyes wide with interest. Garrett sighed, a small smile playing on his lips.
"You always were a curious one. All right, I'll show you, but you must promise to be careful and not touch it. Understand?"
Mani nodded eagerly, her heart racing with excitement. Garrett reached into his satchel and carefully pulled out a short sword wrapped in a dark cloth. As he slowly unwrapped it, Mani's eyes widened at the sight. The blade looked old and tarnished, yet it had an almost sinister sheen to it.
Why does Papa need it?
Her eyes wide with concern.
"Your father has a way with these kinds of things. He might be able to figure out what it is and how to deal with it safely.
Manny stared at the sword, a mix of awe and apprehension on her face.
So Papa will know what to do?
Garrett rewrapped the sword and secured it back in his satchel.
That's the plan.
Manny nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. Together they walked home, the evening air filled with the sounds of Rivertown winding down for the day. As they neared her house, Manny couldn't contain her excitement, sprinting ahead, calling out,
Papa, did you know us halflings are lucky?
Her house, a beautifully decorated home reflecting their wealth, stood out in the neighborhood. Manny burst through the front door, her voice echoing in the warm, welcoming interior. The walls were adorned with fine tapestries, and polished wooden furniture filled the rooms. Inside, her father, Elias Tanglefoot, was in deep conversation with the town librarian, Marigold Fairbreeze. Marigold, with her kind eyes and a gentle smile, had always been a positive influence on Manny. She often visited Marigold at the library, where the librarian patiently taught her the basics of cantrip magic.
Manny, slow down,
Elias chuckled, looking up as his daughter ran in.
What's got you so excited?
Before Manny could answer, Garrett entered the house. Carrying the wrapped sword, he greeted Elias and Marigold with a nod.
I have something important to discuss with you both.
Marigold gave Manny a warm smile.
How was your day, Monty? Did you practice any new spells?
Manny beamed.
I learned a new cantrip today. Watch.
She quickly demonstrated a small flicker of magic, making a light appear in her hand for a brief moment. Marigold clapped her hands together in delight.
That's wonderful, Monty. You're getting better every day.
Marigold praised, ruffling Monty's hair affectionately. Elias looked at his daughter with pride.
You've made great progress, my dear. But now, we need to talk with your uncle. Can you give us a moment?
Manny nodded, albeit reluctantly. She headed towards her room, but couldn't shake her curiosity. Closing the door softly behind her, she tiptoed to another door that allowed her to eavesdrop on their conversation. Garrett placed the wrapped sword on the table.
I found this on my travels. It's dangerous, and I don't know what it is. I almost died from a cut it gave me.
Elias raised an eyebrow.
Where did you find it?
Garrett sighed, unwrapping the sword slowly.
I was in the Frostfell Mountains. There was a cave, deep and hidden, that locals spoke of with dread. Inside, I came across a frozen corpse. A zombie, it seemed, still gripping this sword. When I pried it from its hands, I barely noticed the cut it gave me until the blood started flowing. The wound wouldn't close, no matter what I did.
Marigold leaned in, examining the blade.
It looks ancient. The runes are barely legible. We need to be extremely careful with this.
Elias nodded thoughtfully.
You're right. Garrett, you did well to bring it here. Marigold, can you identify it?
Marigold nodded.
It will take about an hour to set up the proper magic. This isn't something I can rush.
Elias looked at the cabinet nearby.
I'll secure it in the cabinet for now.
As Marigold began setting up her magical tools and components, Elias carefully placed the wrapped sword in a sturdy cabinet. He locked it securely, ensuring it was safe. 10 minutes into Marigold's preparation, Elias and Garrett made themselves useful around the house. Manny had retreated to her room, where she began coloring and humming to herself. Suddenly, a scream pierced the quiet evening air. Elias looked sharply at Garrett.
Did you hear that?
They both moved closer to the window, Garrett's eyes narrowing as they scanned the distance, and Elias turning his head to listen more carefully. A couple of muffled cries and crashing sounds followed, and Garrett noticed wisps of smoke starting to rise.
Something's wrong. There's trouble. We need to investigate.
Garrett nodded, his expression tense. They rushed out of the house, leaving Marigold trying to maintain her concentration despite the worried expression on her face. Moments later, Marigold's focus wavered as the screams and crashing grew louder. Low, guttural voices and menacing growls could now be heard clearly. Unable to ignore it any longer, she abandoned her spell and rushed to the street to investigate. Just as she stepped outside, a massive orc rounded the corner. chasing a group of terrified halflings, swinging its club wildly, demolishing walls and smashing through the small homes with terrifying ease. Marigold's heart pounded as the orc's eyes locked onto hers. Even with halfling bravery, she could barely resist the urge to scream. Marigold bolted back into the house. Just as Monty opened her bedroom door, curiosity piqued by the commotion.
What's going on?
Monty asked, wide-eyed.
Everything's going to be fine.
Marigold tried to reassure her, though her own fear was written on her face. The next moment, the front door exploded inward under the force of the orc's club. The creature was too large for the doorframe, so it began tearing at the walls, ripping them apart with brute strength. In a flurry of activity, Marigold grabbed Monty's arm and rushed her back to her room. With one swift motion, she pushed Monty inside and closed the door. Marigold turned around, standing guard in the doorway. Her stance was not that of a fighter, but a wizard. She grounded herself, clearing her mind, and began moving her hands in counter-rotating motions, with 2 fingers extended. Subtle strands of iridescent light flaked off her fingers. The orc, having ripped a large enough hole in the wall, entered the house and came straight for her. Marigold released the concentrated energy, sending 3 hair-like streams toward the orc, followed by a pulse of power channeled through the strands. The orc stumbled back, crashing into the cabinet, but quickly regained its footing, noticeably damaged. With a roar, the orc rushed forward and swung its club. Marigold quickly crossed her arms above her head, producing a protective barrier. The club struck the barrier with a resounding crash. The force left Marigold reeling. Not prepared for such intense combat, she found herself on the defensive. As the orc unleashed a barrage of swings, Marigold's energies waned. Unable to maintain the barrier, she ducked under the last swing, which crashed into Monty's door and taking out half the wall. Monty stood there, frozen in shock, staring at this terrifying monster. The orc sized Monty up, turned its attention back to Marigold, who was crawling away. Dropping its club, it reached down to grab her legs. Manny stood in sheer horror, her breath catching in her throat as she watched the orc drag her mentor, Marigold, away. The world around them started to crumble, a cacophony of destruction. Everything went black. The darkness was complete, an abyss that swallowed all light and sense of time. Manny's thoughts floated in this void, and what felt like weeks passed. Maybe it was only minutes. She strained her senses, but there was only blackness. Gradually, she began to perceive the faintest hues swirling in the distance, like distant stars barely piercing the night sky. She started to wonder,
Where am I?
as a hooded figure slowly emerged from the darkness.
It is time.
The figure, clad in black robes that seemed to absorb all light, revealed itself to be skeletal, a vestige of death itself. Every fiber of Manny's being recognized what this was, and she could feel herself succumbing to fate, ready to be taken to the unknown. But deep inside, a defiant spark ignited. She paused, looking down, tears welling up in her bright green eyes. Screaming with an emotion she didn't know she possessed, she pointed an accusatory finger at the figure.
No, I want to go home.
The skeletal figure's eyes, hollow and void, showed no mercy. A scythe, glinting ominously, quickly descended toward Mani. She recoiled in terror. The figure spoke again, its voice echoing with a chilling finality.
Others won't pass without you. You must come.
The translucent, swirling colors became more vibrant, coalescing into familiar patterns that tugged at the edges of Mani's memory. She became more defiant, her voice trembling but resolute.
No, I will not go with you.
The figure loomed over Mani, irritation creeping into its hollow tone.
You are a fool for tampering with the destiny of souls.
With a frustrated sigh, it raised the scythe and brought the handle down to the ground with a resounding thud. The darkness rippled, and a large onyx table began to rise from the depths, its surface smooth and cold, reflecting the faint hues of Mani's memories. Mani's heart pounded as she stood her ground, the familiar colors swirling around her, giving her strength. She knew she was not alone. Somewhere within the depths of her being, a powerful force awakened, refusing to be subdued by fate or fear. The ominous figure took its skeletal hand and reached into its robe, slowly pulling out what looked like cards. Death presented them to Mani. They were beyond elaborate, celestial in their design. Staring into them revealed layers of intricate details, each pulling her deeper and deeper into their mesmerizing patterns. Mani snapped out of it and asked curiously,
So, what are they?
Death replied.
20 cards.
He pulled one and showed Mani a black card.
Death.
He pulled another, this one white.
Life. You pick cards until you have at least 3 life or 3 death.
He then pulled a card showing depictions of faces screaming, trying to push through a membrane.
This one is special. 2 deaths.
Mani quickly interrupted in protest.
You can't do that. That's not fair.
A skeletal hand raised again, pulling another card.
This one takes you home.
The card he displayed had an angelic figure rising to the sky. Mani scratched her head and says,
Okay, well, how do I pick one?
Death spread his hand out wide, and the cards began to shuffle themselves just above the table. Finally, he lowered his hand, as the cards' rest spread out perfectly across the surface.
You pick one by turning it over on the table.
He demonstrated by turning one over, revealing a white card.
Now a white is gone. Do you need more instruction on how to pick a card?
His voice was beginning to pitch with frustration. Mani's mouth fell open, seeing him waste one of her white cards.
What are you doing? Don't touch them.
Waving her hands to show him away, she scanned the cards, focusing intently on any difference or flaw. The harder she looked, the more entrancing they became. With no other choice, she reached for a card. Black. Nervous, Mani trembled as she placed it face up on the table. The scythe came screeching down to the edge of the table, leaving a large scratch.
1.
Mani's mind raced, considering every possibility, trying to find a pattern. She took her best guess and reached out once more. Black. Again, she placed it face up next to the other. Another mark from the scythe.
2.
The Reaper smugly stated. Mani began to panic, looking at each card. In frustration, she glanced around. The colorful entities gilded closer, reminding her of sparring with Garrett. He had said,
A halfling can make the worst outcome good and to truly think like a halfling.
She thought aloud. Looking up at the Reaper, she exclaimed.
Let's see.
She grabbed a card. Screaming faces. The figure quickly straightened, finally satisfied.
You cannot tamper with fate,
he said, reaching to take Mani's arm. Dodging Death's grip, she cried out.
I don't pick this one.
Confused, the hand recoiled.
You have the card.
Mani smirked.
You said I have to place it face up on the table to pick a card. I mean, you were kind of rude about it and made it crystal clear. I don't choose this one.
She began picking up more cards one by one until she found the angelic card. Quickly, she placed it face up.
I win.
Outraged, Death pulled back, desperate to block this loophole. Unable to find one, he relented.
You play with powers beyond your understanding.
The lights became more apparent, hovering around Mani as the Reaper held his scythe high. With a swing, a blade of light crossed her vision. She opened her eyes to a landscape of burnt destruction before her. Mani's body throbbed with pain as she lay trapped under a fallen support beam. Clouds of smoke and ash swirling around her as she struggles against the weight, her small frame straining until she manages to wiggle free. Exhausted, she lays down, gasping for breath. When she finally summoned enough energy, she pulled herself up, wincing as a sharp pain shot through her left leg. The scene around her was one of utter devastation. Not a single structure remained standing, including her own home. She should have been in her room, but it was now a heap of rubble. Fires raged throughout the ruins, and the air was filled with the far-off cries of survivors. She spotted a few orcs in the distance, their menacing forms silhouetted against the flames.
They're far away. They shouldn't notice me,
she thought, though doubt gnawed at her. With a limp, she pushed herself forward, each step sending waves of pain through her body, moving cautiously, afraid to call out, instead scanning the wreckage for any sign of life. After a few minutes, her eyes caught a glimpse of blue fabric beneath the debris. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized Marigold's robe. Digging frantically, she uncovered Marigold's lifeless body. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered,
"Please wake up. I need you. Please stay with me."
Her pleas were met with silence. Manny wept over Marigold as she was a mentor and like a mother. When she could weep no more, a glint of metal drew her attention. Marigold's hand still gripped the blade Garrett had delivered. Manny instinctively reached for the weapon, feeling an inexplicable connection as she wrapped her fingers around the hilt. It felt warm and familiar, like the lights she had seen in the dark. Suddenly, a loud voice broke through the silence.
"You're that little one I let get away."
An injured orc limped towards her, his eyes filled with malicious intent. Mani's heart pounded in her chest. Fear threatened to paralyze, but something inside shifted. Her expression went blank, and eyes clouded over. The orc, weapon raised for a killing blow, advanced on her. But Mani, driven by a surge of unnatural strength and speed, stood her ground and struck first. Without changing her expression or gaze, her blade sliced through the air, connecting with deadly precision to his head. The orc crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Mani blinked, her eyes returning to their normal bright green. She looked around at the destruction, a deep sense of loathing filling her. Her town, home, and friends lay in ruins. With a heavy heart, she turned away and began to limp towards the woods, seeking solace and safety among the trees.
In a town by the river, where the waters gleam, lived a young soul with a warrior's dream. Eyes of green and hair like flame, she faced her fears and earned her name. Oh, brave little heart, in the face of despair, with courage and strength, she fought through the fear. Through darkness and pain, she held her ground. A hero was born, her hope was found. In a garden where laughter once rained clear, she learned to fight with love and cheer. Guided by an uncle's steady hand, she grew to be more than the land could stand. Oh, brave little heart, in the face of despair, with courage and strength, she fought through the fear. Through darkness and pain, she held her ground. A hero was born, her hope was found. Shadows fell and the fires roared, she stood her ground and drew her sword. A light in the dark, a beacon so bright. In the bleakest of times, she shone her light. Oh, brave little heart, in the face of despair, with courage and strength, she fought through the fear. Through darkness and pain, she held her ground. A hero was born, her hope was found. She faced the reaper and the cards of fate. With a spirit unbroken, she did not wait. Against all odds, she forged her way, and in her triumph, we find our stay. Oh, brave little heart, in the face of despair, with courage and strength, she fought through the fear. Through darkness and pain, she held her ground. A hero was born where hope was found. So let her tale be sung far and wide, a story of heart and a spirit of pride. In every challenge, remember her fight, for within us all lies a hero's light. Oh, you brave little heart. Oh, brave little heart. In a town by the river where the waters gleam, lived a young soul with a warrior's dream. Eyes of green and hair like flame, she faced her fears and earned her name. Oh, brave little heart, in the face of despair, with courage and strength she fought through the fear. Through darkness and pain she held her ground. A hero was born where hope was found. So let her tale be sung far and wide, a story of heart and a spirit of pride. In every challenge, remember her fight, for within us all lies a hero's light.